hello everybody, welcome back to another episode of Phil at the Movies, where I give you my weekly philosophy on some of the latest films and cinema at large. Today you are listening to episode number 124. As usual, I am your host, Phil Walsh, and I am delighted to be talking about this film today, Young Woman and the Sea. It stars Daisy Ridley. It's released from Disney. It had a limited theatrical release earlier in the summer and can be found on streaming via Disney Plus. It is a shame. It's frankly a damn shame this movie did not receive a wider theatrical release, because this is a wonderful feel-good movie if there ever was one. And not to say that there aren't feel-good movies, and not that saying you can't find them, but it does feel like it has been a while where we haven't had a film that is just a sort of a all-American, against all odds, triumphing over adversity movie. And maybe it's sort of in the spirit of the Olympics from last week. Great job, Team USA. So it kind of all fits with this particular feeling that I'm having. But I saw this movie actually back in theaters at the start of the summer, and I was blown away by it. The film, of course, is about Trudy Ederle, who was an Olympic swimmer and later teacher, and the movie focuses primarily on her treacherous, against all odds, swim across the English Channel in 1926. As a result, she becomes the first woman to accomplish this feat. Now, the movie itself, it documents her life battling measles at a young age and how that was really a sort of a detriment, but she was able to overcome it and ultimately survive those odds when everyone figured she was going to succumb to the disease. And it really puts a special emphasis that this is a woman who was willing to sort of, buck tradition, if you will, and sort of push herself forward at a time where sexism was rampant. Remember, this is the late 19-teens, early 1920s, vastly different world than what we have today. And the film really focuses on how, after sort of finding swimming and discovering a passion for it, learning how to swim, she becomes not only an Olympic swimmer, competing in the 1924 Paris Games, but she sets her sights on being able to swim across the English Channel and become the first woman to do it. Now, as I said, she faced sexism both at home and abroad, and much of it stems from the fact no one thought it would be possible. This was a dangerous channel. It still is a dangerous channel, and most people figured, well, she'll never make it. But she trained, she persevered, and of course, ultimately, in 1926, she makes the swim across and is successful and makes history in the process. Now, it was a harrowing event, and as you might guess, based on the film itself, even if you weren't aware of the story, you can probably guess the outcome, that she's going to make it across. And this is one of those movies where you go into it kind of already knowing the story, even if you're unfamiliar with the actual historical events. But that does not take away from the feeling of joy and exuberance as Trudy makes this swim against all odds. And honestly, the film rests on the shoulders of Daisy Ridley, who is phenomenal. My God, she is a wonderful actress. And, I'm going to take a moment here and get on my soapbox. Shame on you, social media. And I sort of put that at large, because there has been this nagging and prevailing notion that somehow Daisy Ridley is a terrible actress. And, I never believed that, because I have enjoyed her work in a number of films, including The Marsh King's Daughter, Ophelia, and Sometimes I Think About Dying. She is a multifaceted, multi-talented actress, and this film showcases her acting chops across the board. But it's just sort of the nature of social media, because she was in the last 3 Star Wars films, and there are, of course, varied reactions to those 3 movies. There's sort of been this assumption from many kind of out there in the ether that, oh, she's a terrible actress, oh, she can't act because she was in Star Wars. And again, I'm here to call bull on that argument. Again, she is a wonderful actress, she is a talented actress, and this again showcases her range and talent as an actress. And I was just dazzled by what she was able to accomplish, because Daisy Ridley has a distinct voice and a distinct accent, and she's playing an American in this particular film, particularly an American from New Jersey, and she's also playing the child of immigrants, and she's able to make it work and sort of thread that needle so effortlessly that you don't see Daisy Ridley. Like I said, I did a little bit of side research after the film and just read up on Trudy Ederle and her history, and it's amazing what she is able to accomplish in this film. Ridley transforms into this real life person, and again does it with the cinematic flourishes and beats that you might expect in these kind of films. But it's a wonderful, wonderful performance. And again, as I said, she's able to accomplish it with just the right amount of both grit and sass. And at the core of it, this film is not only about this sort of incredible journey and swimming event by this young woman, but it's also just a powerful story about family itself. Trudy's family is at the center of this movie, and I found that to be such a wholesome. I'm kind of getting a little sentimental here the way I'm talking about this movie, but you can't help but have a smile on your face. And again, sort of coming off of the Olympic Games from last week, I sort of really was thinking about this movie again, and it just makes you feel so good. You want to raise your fist in the air and just cheer and whatnot. And that was how I felt certainly when I watched this movie, and now revisiting it ahead of this podcast, I felt those same feelings all over again. That this is just a special movie that does what it sets out to accomplish, which is to sort of fill you with that sense of pride, marvel at human persistence and perseverance in the face of adversity, and then of course bearing the fruits of those success in the end. It's a wonderful feel-good movie, and I know I've sort of said that a few times already, but a lot of times we just need those kind of films. We don't need to have sort of a hypothetical thesis on sort of society of the current day, or sort of do a bunch of box checking. It's just great to have a movie that is sort of almost a throwback to films that really aren't made anymore. And I know I might be generalizing a little bit, but Young Woman in the Sea, in a lot of ways, it is so refreshing and outside the box, because particularly we don't necessarily get these kind of harrowing but also triumphant stories of this particular nature. I mean, I'm not saying they don't exist, but they're not necessarily the mainstream. And this is just one of those movies where it just checks all of those right boxes to just sort of lift your spirits, make you proud, and just sort of marvel at the tenacity and the determination of this young woman. And it's a harrowing story. It's a beautiful story, and it is ultimately one that I think, again, whether you're an American or whether you're someplace else, you really can take away this just amazement at the power of belief, the power of the human spirit, and the drive to prove yourself and ultimately to accomplish something against great odds. And that's a universal theme that can be found in any situation, be it swimming across the English Channel or in any other facet of life. But no, this is a film that I wish could have had a larger theatrical release, because I think this film would have done extremely well. And that's sort of been an issue that I have with a lot of sort of streaming-centric films. There was a movie with Anne Hathaway that came out earlier this year called The Idea of You, and it was released on Amazon. It was a direct streaming film. It's wonderful, and I look at some of these films that have come out more recently that you think if they had been a streaming, they might have gone and just sort of been forgotten about. I think of a film like The Fall Guy, which at the start people thought, oh, this film is a disaster because it didn't make that much money. Well, it kept playing, and it did quite well, and more people discovered it. And I think this is, again, another one of those films where if it had been released at a kind of a wider market, I'm not saying it would have done huge, Deadpool and Wolverine numbers, but I think it would have found more of its audience instead of just sort of limiting it to a streaming network. And again, I understand there's a lot of different metrics and designs that go into what movies are exclusively for streaming versus the theatrical, but this is one that I think, had it had a theatrical full theatrical release, it really would have resonated, particularly now with the Olympic Games having come and gone. But certainly in the build-up to it, I think they really could have capitalized on it. But again, who am I to question the designs of the Disney company? But nevertheless, Young Woman in the Sea, what a remarkable story, what a remarkable woman Trudy Etterly was. And what a feel-good film. I know I've said that a few times, but it really does. I had just a great big smile on my face. I had that warm feeling in my chest, and I was like, you know what? This was the perfect movie to see. And I remember the day that I saw it back in June, it was a rainy, overcast day, very much late spring, if you will. Felt more like almost like the onset of fall than it did summer. And I saw this film. I went to the theater, and I remember leaving the theater, even though it was raining, it didn't matter. I just was so enthralled by the story, so just sort of captured by the power of the human spirit. I was like, yes, absolutely. Like I said, it turned the frown upside down. And again, that's the power of movies. That's why I love going to the theater. That's why I love movies in general, because they have that ability to sort of change attitudes and change perspectives in a lot of ways for the better, for the positive. And that is the power of cinema, that it can do that. So again, I will always champion these kind of films. I will certainly always champion the theatrical experience, because I do believe it is essential and it is something that we should be fighting for every single day. We do not want a direct to streaming exclusivity. Enough is enough. Let's keep our theaters. Let's support them. All right, I will get off my soapbox. But in all seriousness, on tying it back to the film, if you haven't seen this film, I'm going to talk on both sides of my mouth right now, but it is available. You can check it out on Disney Plus. I would encourage you to watch this film, because it is a perfect family film. It's a perfect movie if you're just looking for that feel-good, again, turn that frown upside down kind of movie, and one that is going to inspire you and make you marvel at sort of the resilience and beauty of the human spirit. And it's a movie that you can connect to. It crosses the culture lines. It crosses borders. It crosses boundaries, because it's all about that power of belief and determination, and that is something that is felt universal. That is a universal theme that connects all of us, whether we're in France, whether we're in the United States, or whether we're in sort of the middle of nowhere. It has that power, that ability. And so again, I might be perhaps overselling the film too much, but you'll bear with me when I say that Young Woman in the Sea really did hit home for me. It is one film that should not go out to see. It is one that you should catch, and one that you should definitely watch, and I would highly recommend it to any and all who might be interested. But there we go. The Young Woman in the Sea, starring Daisy Ridley. That is my review for you today. I hope you enjoyed this particular episode. That does it for now. I'll be back next week, and yes, we will do this all over again for the love of movies.